got a couple things I'd like to get done in this video. First thing, if you guys haven't checked him out, look at I'm Your Huckleberry. He's making some really high quality review videos on YouTube. I'm gonna put a link in the description box. Dude's only got like 93 subscriptions right now, or subscribers rather. And I think if you check his videos out, you're gonna see they're really top notch, and he puts a lot of thought into them. So if you got time, give him a look, and if you like what you see, give him a subscription. I think you'll enjoy it. Also, Patty's Potato Peelers has released a video using the sharpening stones that he won in my giveaway contest, those being the Imanishi 400 Latte, the 1 in 6K combo stones, also the Knives Plus strop block with green compound. I know he really enjoys that. He's told me about it a few times. It's an excellent strop, priced very well also. He made mention that he'd like to see a few tips on sharpening. Not real sure what I can throw out there that I haven't mentioned in other videos or in my actual technique and demonstration video. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link also, and try to put a little box that'll appear up in the corner linking it. But I want to go over a few things with these Imanishi stones, particularly for him. I also would like to test S30V out on those stones. My recent debacle with the Spyderco smock not getting very keen has left me wondering if it's an issue with S30V against aluminum oxide, or if that smock knife just had some problems. I think it's just the smock knife personally, but I would like to test it. And to test it, I'm going to use some Benchmade S30V. I've also got my Spyderco Manix 2 that I plan to sharpen as well with another set of stones. So we're going to test Benchmade's S30V and Spyderco's in another knife against some of the same stones that I used previously and see if I can get them keen. I would like to see double digits, but I would be happy with anything 110 or below. Actually, 108 or below I would be happy with on my edge on up edge tester. Now, of course, that thing is not 100% accurate. It's just giving you a ballpark figure. You're testing one little small teeny area on the blade, but it gives you guys an idea of how sharp a knife can be in comparison to other knives that I've sharpened. And it just puts a number on things. It's convenient, but as I said when I first got this thing, don't put too much stock into it. You know, it's a data point. It's really difficult to explain how sharp a knife is, and it's even more difficult to demonstrate it. Cutting paper is one way, but you know that doesn't give you the whole picture, just like the edge on up edge tester doesn't give you the whole picture. The only way you truly know how sharp a knife is to feel the edge for yourself. Regardless, let's get started. So first things first, I'm going to talk to you guys like I'm talking directly to Patty, so forgive me if any of this is familiar to you or redundant. But this 400 grit latte stone is extremely thirsty. I usually soak mine for about 30 minutes. You can perma-soak it. That is, you can put it in water and just leave it. I don't do that myself. Water goes rancid after about a week or two. You start developing mold and all kinds of nastiness. You can put a cap full of bleach in there with it, but I'm not sure if I want to put bleach on my stones. I have done it before, but it's not something I would do all the time. This stone is very aggressive for the grit rating. However, if you've got some serious grinding to do, like a major reprofile on S30V for example, this may not be the ideal stone to start out with. You might want to go with something coarser, or as Patty did, go with diamond. Get that initial grinding out of the way, and then come back to this stone. The surface texture can really determine how quickly the stone cuts. Mine right now is pretty glazed over. I haven't conditioned it in quite a long time. It just hasn't needed to be flattened, so I haven't conditioned it. I'll get around to it eventually, but this is how the stone was when I sharpened my smock knife. This is how I would like to use it on this Benchmade. As you use this stone, buildup will occur. Don't worry about that buildup. This stone will continue to cut, and it will continue to cut well, even if the entire surface is black. I've shown that where I thinned out a knife, or actually I was just sharpening the main bevel, just grinding it down, and I had the entire surface almost covered in load up. And then I raised my angle and sharpened the V edge. It cut just fine, no problems. So if you get load up on the stone, don't worry about it, keep using it. It's going to cut just fine. As you can see, just this little bit of me talking, my stone's almost already dried out. I got just a little bit of water still on the surface. So it is a very thirsty stone. Unfortunately, you do have to constantly toss water on it. But it is a fantastic stone. It's got fantastic feedback. It's got a fantastic feel. It's kind of scratchy. That's the best way I can describe it. And as I said before, for the grit rating, it is very fast. So my edge bevel is not polished or anything like that. I forget what I sharpened this to. Maybe 1,000 grit when I first got it. Go ahead and cut this edge off. The reason I cut the edge off is to remove any fatigued steel that's on there, but it also gives me a reflection of light. When I view the knife directly under light like this, I can see a reflection of light coming back to me. When I sharpen, if I don't grind to a burr, or I'm not sure if I've reached the apex, I can always look at it directly under light and see if I'm getting that reflection back. If I'm getting the reflection, I know I haven't gotten to the apex. I know I got some more work to do. But it does remove any fatigued steel. So if there's any damage or anything like that, you're basically grinding it off. Now this is a very hard stone. It doesn't dish easily. It doesn't release much grit. And like I said, it's got a scratchy feel to it that you really got to experience to appreciate. But it's one of my favorite stones in the lower grits. So when I sharpen, I always tend to put the knife at a 45-degree angle to the stone. I don't sharpen head on like this. I found when I sharpen this way, I have a real tendency to roll my wrist. And if I'm trying to keep consistency, I don't want that rolling in there. So I always tilt the knife at 45 degrees, give or take. I mean, it doesn't have to be exact. Tilt it at 45 degrees, that keeps my hand a lot steadier, and I don't have to worry about wobble. The other thing it does is the scratch pattern it leaves is at a diagonal direction. So as you pull the knife through material, the angle that those scratches are at will actually bite into the material and almost cut it like a saw blade. So it's got a little bit better cutting capabilities with the knife angled this way. It's subtle. It's not going to be, night or day difference sharpening it this way versus sharpening it this way. But there is a difference there. So one of the other issues Patty talked about in his video was when he starts recording, he gets in a rush. biggest thing with sharpening is you cannot rush yourself. You have to be patient. You have to grind this metal all the way down to the apex, no matter how long it takes. Sometimes it may be 5 minutes, sometimes it may take you 30 minutes, but don't stop until you've ground down to that apex. Now for me, to do that, I usually feel for a burr. But if you look down at that reflection of light, and that light reflection is no longer there, you know you've pretty much ground all the way to the apex. You just got to do with whatever works for you. Grinding to a burr is about the only surefire way I can do it and know that I've actually ground all the way to the edge. There's been so many times where I was in a rush, or I felt like I'd been grinding for too long and I was just wasting metal, and I would stop, go to my next stone, finish up, strop, and then cut something, and my edge would be completely dull. And that's because I never reached the apex on my very first stone. So no matter how long it takes you, always grind to a burr, or if you're familiar with grinding that reflection of light out, make sure you do that. If you stop prematurely, your edge is never going to get sharp. I've got a little bit of burr in some areas, but I don't have a full burr across the whole edge. I'm going to go ahead and switch sides here just to get some even wear and some even grinding going on. Now that doesn't mean I'm done. Once I've got a burr on this other side, I'm going to go back. I'm going to make sure I get a burr sharpening this way. Again, if you don't reach that apex, the knife will never get sharp. So a lot of folks have an issue finding their angle. Best way to really do it that I found is just take a Sharpie marker, color your bevel in, put your knife on the stone, and grind. And what you want to look for is that Sharpie marker to be removed. And that's really the best way I have found to locate where your bevel and your angle is. So how do you hold consistency while you're sharpening? I showed in a video a few weeks ago, consistency is really not that important. The biggest important aspect of sharpening is to grind to a burr, or to grind all the way to the apex. But to get consistency, you just have to get experience. It comes with muscle memory, and it comes with practice. Don't be afraid, if you're having problems, marking that Sharpie marker on that bevel for every single pass. Make a pass, make sure you're removing the marker, put some more on there, make another pass. Stop, check it, put some more marker. Do that until you get comfortable and you can actually feel when you're on that bevel. Once you're on that bevel and you get that feeling, it becomes easier the next time you do it. And then the next time you do it, it's even easier. And before you know it, you've developed muscle memory, and you can lock right in on the stone and your bevel without having to use the marker. I've got a burr across this whole edge except for the very, very, very base. So to get to that point, I'm going to put my finger down directly over the area I want to sharpen. Now I'm not putting any more pressure down, I'm just putting the weight of my hand and the weight of my finger on that particular spot, and I'm going to go back and forth on the stone. That's going to give enough pressure to grind that one area with pinpoint pressure till I get a burr. And I've almost got it all the way. It's just right at the very, very tip. So I'm just going to do the same thing, put my finger down, and just keep grinding. Still not quite there. One thing you don't want to do if you're having difficulty like I am in this one little spot, you don't want to raise your angle. You want to keep the same angle you've been at and just keep going. Just keep grinding. It will develop a burr, or you will reach that apex eventually. Just be patient with it and know that it's going to happen. There we go. I've got a burr now. So because I was grinding in this one spot, kind of pinpointing that pressure, I'm now going to do full sweeps from heel to tip, just to kind of blend it all back in. And now I'm going to sharpen this side and grind until I get a burr on the other. Got a burr everywhere except right here in this last little bit of the tip. So again, I'm going to isolate that one area. To isolate where my tip is, I go through my whole stroke. I learned this from J. Davis 882. I go through my whole stroke until I get to that tip, and then I stop. That's where I want to grind. So I'll put my finger directly on that point, and I'll start grinding. I'll reset, go through my whole stroke, get to that tip, and grind. Check. Still need some at the tip. So I'll keep going. And again, don't get frustrated if it doesn't appear right away. Just be patient with it. It will come. And although this is a coarse stone, it's really not removing a whole ton of metal. It's just removing a very small amount, and it's removing a very small amount in small increments. So don't be afraid to grind, and don't be afraid if it's taking you 30 to 40 minutes to develop a burr. Sometimes that's how long it takes. If you go back and look at some of my older videos, I've got some that run almost an hour in length because of that. Okay, I've got a burr across this whole edge. So now that I've got a burr, what I'm going to do is some finishing passes. I want to try to minimize the burr. I want to try to make it as small as possible, or cut it completely off. If I don't get it cut completely off, I'm not really worried about it on this stone because I am going to go to other stones. But if I can get it completely removed from this stone, it's just going to make it that much easier to hone the edge on the next stone. I just did a simple countdown, 5 passes, then 4 passes, then 3 passes, 2 and 1. Filling the edge now. I'm not filling much burr at all. Maybe a little bit here in the belly. So I'm going to do a few single strokes, maybe 6 on each side, and then we'll switch stones. I'm just using the weight of my hands. I'm not putting any additional pressure down. There's no need for it. Let the stone do the work. And again, be patient with it. We're going to call that good enough. Now this next stone is a 1K, 6K combo stone. It does suck up a little water, but you can use it pretty much like a splash and go. If you want to let it sit in water for about 5 minutes, it will prevent you from having to put so much on it as you sharpen. I just let water run across the top of it for, I don't know, 45 seconds or so, and that's all I've done to it so far. Now this stone, like the 400 grit, is very hard. The surface texture can depend or can dictate how quickly the stone works, but this one reminds me very much of a King brand 1K. It's a little harder. I think it produces a little bit of a better edge, but is very reminiscent of the King. Again, we're just going to find the angle that we sharpened at, and we're going to go until the scratch pattern completely transforms from the 400 grit scratches to the 1K scratches, and I want to make sure that they go all the way to the apex. You can grind to a burr again on the 1K stone if you're using this sort of combination. It's not necessary, but that's going to be a surefire way to know that you have ground all the way to the apex. That's what I usually tend to do, is I'll grind to a burr. I don't make a big one, but I do make enough that I can feel it, and then I'll switch stones. And if I don't feel the burr across the whole edge, I'm not really worried about it. I just look at the actual scratch pattern. I make sure it looks like it's going all the way to the apex. If it's not, in some areas, I'll concentrate on those areas and then do my full sweeps again to blend it all back in. Now all of these stones, you can take a diamond plate, run over the top of the stone, and create a slurry or a mud. And what that will do is that will help grind out the scratches from the previous stone, but it'll also help you minimize the burr because you've got that mud rolling across the apex and the edge. So any burr that you've created will be minimized or even cut off oftentimes with the mud on the stone, so you don't even develop a burr. I do use a slurry on occasion. I don't always do it. It just depends, 1, on my mood, 2, how the bevel looks, and 3, how well the stone is cutting the steel. If it's going really slow, I will develop a slurry. And it looks like I've got just about every portion of this ground. I've got a burr across the whole edge. I've just got a little bitty tiny blemish right here in the tip I want to concentrate on. So I know I've got a burr, I know I've ground all the way to the apex, I know I'm ready to switch to the other side. I've got that blemish out, I'm going to switch over, and I'm actually going to turn my stone so I get even wear. Again, this stone is very hard, it doesn't wear much, but it's just good practice, good habits to get into. When you're doing the belly of a knife, you do have to lift your hand a little bit to follow the curve and to hit the tip. Now, sharpening away from your body like this, angling the knife at a 45-degree angle like I have, is very uncomfortable. It took me quite a long time to develop a feel for this. If this feels uncomfortable for you, try sharpening straight on this way. Try sharpening straight on this way, and then as you get to the tip, angle the knife like this. Seth Wright is another sharpener here on YouTube. He sharpens most of his knives that way. I'm not very comfortable doing it with my pocket knives, but if you'd like to see that technique in demonstration, check his videos out. He does a fantastic job sharpening that way. I think that's it's actually like a traditional Japanese way of sharpening. I've just gotten so used to turning at a 45-degree angle, doing anything else feels unnatural to me. I've got a burr across the whole edge. Again, I'm going to do some finishing passes. I'm just going to do a countdown. Do like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. A lot of people tell me that the tip area is a problem for them, as well as the base. For me, when I'm sharpening the tip, I usually keep my finger directly on it, and as I come across the stone, my fingertip is riding the stone as well as the tip, so I can feel when I've reached that very tip. Once I get to that point, I stop, and then I do my backstroke, stop, do my backstroke, stop, do my backstroke. And that's about all I do for the tip. I don't pay much special attention to it unless I've got a little blemish in it, or it doesn't look like I've ground to a burr in that spot. The base of the edge is always a trouble spot for me. Oftentimes I'll kick the knife at an angle like this and do a U pattern. I'll start high on the stone with the knife kicked up like this, and then I'll bring it down to the tip like that. So really exaggerated, it looks like that. Same thing on this side. I'll kick it up this way, get that base. And you just gotta find what works for you. These little tips and tricks are just things I've developed over time. You may find them useful. Then again, you may find your own way of doing things. It doesn't make you wrong. It doesn't make me right. If it works for you, by all means do it. I'm done with this 1K. We're now ready to switch to the 6. Now this 6K is pretty soft as you use it, and you do edge leading strokes like this with the edge into the stone. If your angle is off, you can gouge this stone. If you find that you're doing that often, try doing stropping strokes where you only do edge trailing strokes. You can sharpen a knife entirely doing nothing but stropping strokes. Doing it this way will prevent you from gouging the knife. However, be prepared for a pretty big burr. That's really about the only downside to sharpening a knife with edge trailing strokes, is you're going to develop a pretty nasty pretty nasty burr doing it this way. But you'll know you've ground to an apex when you get that burr. This 6K can really polish a knife. You can get some really pretty edges off this stone. The longer you spend on it, the better the polish will get. And we're already starting to get a pretty nice little shine going on, just from that little bit right there. Showing an edge bevel is so difficult. If you gouge this stone, don't worry about it, just keep going, unless it's a really big chunk. If you take a really big chunk out of it, spin the stone around, sharpen on the other side. But if it's just a little shave off of the surface area, don't sweat it, just keep going. You shouldn't have any problems running your blade back across that. It will wear itself down as you use the stone. If it's just bothersome to you, by all means go ahead and lap it out, but it's not really necessary if it's just a little, like I said, like a little surface gouge. The buildup on this stone will help you polish the bevel. As the steel embeds into the stone, from what I understand, that creates a burnishing effect. So you get metal on metal burnishing the bevel, which will create a shining polish. If you notice that you're still dealing with a lot of scratches from the previous stone and you want to get all those scratches out, as it develops buildup, spin the stone around, continue using it, check your bevel again. If there's still scratches in it you want to get out, remove the load up. You can get a Nagara stone, you can get these rust erasers, they work great. A diamond plate, anything that'll remove that top surface will remove that load up. Now this stone, it is tough enough to take your edge if you're not putting a lot of pressure down. So try to use just the weight of your hands and don't push down. If you do that, you'll find that this stone, unless you really go off angle, you'll find this stone doesn't gouge that easily. If you do, don't worry about it. Like I said, I just did it right there. Not sure where it's at, but I did just gouge it. I don't know if you heard it. Just keep going. You may blunt the knife just a little bit, but this stone can help bring it back if you just keep going on it. If you really blunted it out, just flip over to the 1K stone, regrind that area, then come back to it. That's where right there's where I gouged it. I don't know if you can see that little hook right there. So I'm not going to worry about that. I can continue sharpening over it, and I've got no worries that it's going to hurt my edge. My blade just passes right over it. And I'm just about done here. Looking at the polish, it looks pretty good. I do see a little blemish right here in the base and right here in the tip. Again, the two problem areas for most people, the tip and the base. So I'm just going to concentrate putting finger pressure down right here in the base. I'm going to go back and forth a few times. Check it. That little blemish is pretty much gone. Now I'm going to do the same thing in the tip. I'm going to go through my whole stroke, isolate that tip, finger pressure only. I'm running all across where I gouged it. Not a problem. It's not hurting my edge. It's gliding right across it. And I've got that blemish out. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. And do some long strokes again to blend it all back in. Ordinarily I wait until after I strop to test my edge, but I've been asked to test it right after the stones before stropping, so we're going to go ahead and do 2 tests this way. I'm going to strop and we'll do 2 more tests afterwards. So that's 245 and 166. So why are the numbers so far off? I probably got a burr on there. That's why I usually strop first. So any remnants of a burr that's on the edge get removed. I'm going to strop on white compound. Now this is a Stroman strop. Stroman passed away in March, but I believe others have taken over the business to keep things going, to keep things alive, so I haven't tried ordering a new strop from them yet, but I do plan to in the future. Stroman has the best compounds that I've found. Their white especially is my favorite. Now this strop is very, very smooth and it loads up very easily. So it does require a little more maintenance than say a DLT extra large strop, but the quality on it is just top notch. Plus, you are helping to support a small business and receiving a fantastic handmade item at the same time. Alright, let's test this edge again now that I've stropped. It's 94. 91, 57. So doing the average, it came out to 81. Benchmade S30V on the Imanishi stones, getting double digits, no problem. So obviously, at least for Benchmade's S30V, using the aluminum oxide Imanishi stones worked just fine. I think they would work just fine with Spyderco's S30V as well. It's just my smock knife had some kind of problem with it. Either it's the heat treat or a burnt edge, I don't know which. Get a close up of this bevel. Now S30V is not the easiest stuff to polish. Any of you guys that have ever sharpened it should know that. But these Imanishi stones, as I said, they are very capable of producing a very bright polish.
That's very keen. It just melts through paper.
Well, guys, I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions or comments, as always, leave them below. Y'all have a good one.